everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to look back at the career of John Travolta and break down the overall best movies within his filmography. Now I'll do my best to avoid spoilers throughout the films listed, but you can check them out within the video description first, just in case you haven't yet seen them. So the first movie that we'll look at within this list is Look Who's Talking from 1989. Travolta starring alongside Kirstie Alley. The light-hearted romantic comedy was driven very much by the novel concept of hearing the thoughts of Kirstie Alley's baby named Mikey, who was voiced by Bruce Willis. And it's overall a very harmless, watchable movie, and Travolta plays a very good role in what would probably be the biggest highlight within his career within the 1980s. The movie itself was a big box office hit, grossing over $297 million from just a minor budget of $7.5 million. It did spawn two far less successful sequels throughout both 1990 and 1993, but the first film remains the best and the most memorable. Very much a one-off success, but it still remains a very entertaining overall comedy and a good entry within Travolta's career. We'll then go on to another light-hearted movie, which is Get Shorty from 1994. Travolta this time playing Miami mobster and loan shark Chili Palmer, who from his love of movies teams up with Gene Hackman to make a movie on one of his debt collections. Very much easily watchable, moving at a leisurely pace. It's bolstered by a classy supporting cast including the likes of Gene Hackman, Rene Russo and Danny DeVito, and it's very much a quirky comedy thriller rather than a true gangster epic, but it's still very much worth the watch and was another stepping stone to Travolta's renaissance within the 1990s. And when talking of that renaissance, we go on to the next movie which started it all really, to be honest, and that is of course Pulp Fiction. Quentin Tarantino's hugely influential crime thriller was a labyrinth of story sequences deliberately set out of chronological order and featured a whole host of criminal figures. It also set the trend for that much more quirky, comedic, self-referential crime thriller or drama, of which we saw many iterations following this film. Some were lesser and some were actually superior. As well as certifying Tarantino as one of the most exciting directors of the time, the movie was also the launching pad of many established actors into the mainstream cultural populace, whether it was Harvey Keitel, Uma Thurman, Samuel L. Jackson massively, and of course the biggest recipient of them all was Travolta himself. For so long in the Hollywood wilderness, this movie signalled his big comeback within the industry, and he'd go on to sustain it mostly to become one of the biggest A-list actors within the 1990s. Now whilst I will always maintain that Tarantino has made superior films in both Reservoir Dogs and Jackie Brown, Pulp Fiction is still a well-crafted piece of movie making and definitely one of the most integral within Travolta's overall career. Now we will continue on the path of Travolta's comeback, this time focusing on Broken Arrow. Travolta is out and out the villain as Major Deakins within the Air Force, looking to blackmail the government for money via the use of nuclear warheads. Going up against his once fellow pilot Christian Slater, John Woo's breakneck actioner was himself breaking into the mainstream after creating many cult Asian action classics, and this movie does rely a lot on Travolta's screen presence as he dials it up as the crazy maniacal antagonist, but the performance for the most part works, and whilst John Woo has made superior efforts, both he and Travolta would collaborate for one entry on this list later on. Broken Arrow is still a solid watchable entry within the 90s action genre. We then move on to another fine movie, and that is Phenomenon, where we see Travolta's mechanic being struck down by a bright light, and shortly after he starts to exhibit highly intense intelligence IQ and also powers of telekinesis. Much less of a science fiction or superhero film, this is much more of a human drama, covering themes of purpose, existence, and asking the question about doing the right thing, and going for that much more uplifting, heartfelt experience. And whilst it can get a bit over sentimental, a bit saccharine at times, I think Travolta performs very well again, carrying the story amongst the fine supporting cast, and I just think this is overall a very good, solid movie. We then go on to what's likely the biggest ever film within Travolta's entire career, and that is Grease. The effervescent musical romantic comedy centres on Travolta's Danny Zuko on-off relationship with Olivia Newton-John's blonde beauty Sandy within the school summer of 1958. And 40 years plus on after its release, it still remains the most iconic musical ever, but that also shouldn't detract from what a great movie it is in its own right. Still an all-round pure entertaining experience, full of energy, charm and personality, songs both infectious and transcendent. Like so many fans growing up, especially for the 80s, I've lost count of how many times I've watched this overall movie, It truly is one of those endlessly rewatchable films that never loses its impact, and all of that, of course, is centered around John Travolta and his great chemistry with Olivia Newton-John, something that they tried to recreate in later movies with far less success. But alongside another movie that we will mention later on within this breakdown, this film put John Travolta right on top of the industry, hopefully become one of the biggest leading actors of the next decade. Now sadly that didn't turn out to be the case, but Grease's legacy continues to shine on many years after, and its impact within the cultural landscape cannot be disputed, and it's very much a part of Travolta's legacy. We'll then go on to his career before the big hits came around in 1976 with the movie Carrie. Brian De Palma's stunning, intense supernatural horror focuses on 16-year-old teenager Carrie being tormented and bullied by her schoolmates. She eventually reaches breaking point emotionally and starts to unleash her devastating revenge through the powers of telekinesis. Now yes, to be honest, Travolta here is much more of a smaller supporting role, as of course Sissy Spacek's incredible central performance is integral to the film, but the film itself is so good that I had to include it within this list here, and despite the darkness, it's weirdly satisfying seeing bullies get their comeuppance in such a terrifying manner. Still easily the best adaptation of Stephen King's novel, Carrie's ultimate revenge is still so impactful and iconic in the prom dance, and it's another true testament to the greatness of director Brian De Palma, who still doesn't get enough recognition within the industry. So we'll then move on to the runner-up on this list, and that is Face Off. At the start of this film, Travolta plays hardened special agent Sean Archer, tracking down Nicolas Cage's master criminal Castor Troy, wanting vengeance for his son's murder. The motivation escalates even further as we see both individuals swapping faces and also adjusting to each other's way of life. John Woo's exhilarating kinetic actioner saw the master action director given full resources of a big Hollywood budget to fully exhibit his full range of intense shootouts, balletic slow motion, and also hyperbolic soundtrack, and it truly is action movie making at its finest. The movie is of course completely driven by both Travolta and Cage's brilliant performances, completely convincing as they transmit each other's personalities, both so watchable and charismatic, and it's still great to watch on a big screen. And this was really at the point where John Travolta was at the height of his superstar status and comeback within the 1990s, and as crazy as the movie is, it still works so well, but to be honest, it only works because of the two actors involved. Anybody else, I think the movie would have failed, but that's again testament to both the ability of the two lead actors as well as John Woo's master direction, and Face Off still ranks today as one of the greatest action films of the 1990s. And so we come to it at last, the number one most memorable and best movie within John Travolta's career, and it is of course Saturday Night Fever. Burning through the disco nightclub scene as young teenager Tony Marino, trying to define himself in the tough Brooklyn neighborhood and community. So often misinterpreted as another musical or a musical themed story, Saturday Night Fever is actually a hardened adult coming of age drama, taking on multiple mature themes and giving a very harsh and realistic insight into the way of life at the time, and it can come across as very gritty and very dark. But of course the movie is defined by its musical elements, iconic and transcendent for propelling the disco musical genre into the mainstream culture zeitgeist, fueled by the unmistakable famous Bee Gees soundtrack, and of course at the centre of it all, Travolta electrified audiences with his raw impressionable performance, full of charisma and energy, and he rightly earned a Best Actor nomination for that role. And at the centre of that performance is probably the movie's most iconic sequence, where we see Tony performing his dance routine solo on a nightclub dance floor. This is iconic cinema right here, bringing a smile to your face whenever you watch it. Truly emblematic of the times and also the imagination that he managed to capture with audiences. The film of course was a massive box office success, grossing nearly 300 million from just a budget of around 6 to 7 million. And alongside Grease, it gave signs that Travolta would go on to become one of the many leading actors throughout the 1980s, but sadly that wouldn't be the case. But no doubt about it, Saturday Night Fever still remains his most iconic performance and his most culturally transcendent movie, and that's why I still hold it as overall the best entry throughout his long-standing movie career. So there's my overall thoughts and breakdown of the movies within John Travolta's long-time standing career. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any other movies, television series, or any other topics with the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, let me know within the comments and I will see if I can provide that subject matter for you later on down the line within the future. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves and I will see you very, very soon.